Hello students, welcome to e-learning. In this video, we will be discussing the fourth lesson of your alternative English prose section, that is the last lesson by Alphonse Daudet. Alphonse Daudet, a famous French short story writer and novelist, born on 13 May 1840 in France. Daudet wrote several noteworthy literary pieces in his distinguished career. Most of the works are based on provincial life in the south of France. He also wrote several plays in which were critically acclaimed. His most famous novel is Formont Junior and Riesler Senior. In his last years, Daudet suffered from an agonizing ailment of the spinal cord caused by his venereal disease. He died on December 16, 1897. The last lesson is by the author Alphonse Daudet, as we have already discussed about him. In the last lesson, the author narrates events about the year 1870 when France was captured by Bismarck-led Prussian forces. Furthermore, the Lorraine and Alsace districts were under Prussian rule. There was the discontinuation of teaching of France in these two districts. There was an order from the French for the French teachers to leave. So we have to get an idea of this Alsace and Lorraine, a small district which were handed over and passed over to the Germans after the Prussian War. So here, the modern history of Alsace and Lorraine was largely influenced by the rivalry between French and German nationalism. France long sought to attain and then preserve what it considered to be its natural boundaries, that is Alsace and Lorraine. In 1871, the newly created German empires demanded for Alsace from France after its victory from the Franco-Prussian War, which was not simply a punitive measure. The transfer was controversial even among the Germans. The German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck was initially opposed to it, as he thought it would endanger permanent French enmity towards Germany. Some German industrialists did not want the competition from the Alsatian industries, such as the cloth markets, who would be exposed to competition from the sizable industry in Mulhouse. Karl Marx was also against this opinion or idea to demand Alsace from France. Now, initially we could see that the Germany mainly wanted this place, Alsace and Lorraine, because it acts as a buffer zone. So they wanted it to act as a buffer zone in the event of any future wars with France. The area contains the Vosges Mountains, which would be much more defensible than the Rhine River if the French ever attempted to invade. Many Alsatians and Lorraines found German rule over the Franco-Prussian War oppressive, and they wished to return back to France. France likewise wished to recover its territory, since the French considered its seizure by Germany unjust. So France demanded a nature or a return of the territory after defeating Germany in the World War I or the First World War. Okay, so these two districts of the Alsace and Lorraine were always under France, and they enjoyed being under France, but it was taken over by Germany, and they did not like it because the Germans were oppressive and they wished to return back to France. So when France defeated Germany in the First World War, France demanded this territory to be returned back to them. I hope this issue with the boundaries and territories is clear to you. Let's move on. We have here the last lesson. About the lesson, it revolves around the language and its importance to the citizens of a country. It says that it is the duty of every citizen to safeguard the language of the country as it is the identity of that country. The lesson depicts how, after defeating France in the war, the Prussians wanted to rule over not only the territory of France but also over the minds and hearts of the people. And that was, first of all, they wanted these people, whoever were residing in Alsace and Lorraine, to first learn their language. So you see how important is language, and preserving our language is important. The story reinforces the fact that we value something more when it is lost. The pain and anguish of the students and the teacher is evident as everyone realizes how things were taken for granted. When things were with us, we usually take it for granted. The lesson emphasizes the importance of mother tongue for everyone and the need to realize the fact that it is our language that gives us our identity, respect, and freedom. And it is very true. If we don't value our mother tongue, if we don't know our mother tongue, then our identity is lost somewhere. Let's move on. Here we have the characters of this lesson. The first character is Mr. M. Hamel, a devoted French teacher for 40 years. M. Hamel is an experienced teacher who has been teaching in school for 40 years. He imparts primary education in all subjects. He is a hard taskmaster, and students like Franz, who are not good learners, are in great dread of being scolded by him. The latest order of the Prussians upsets him. He has to leave the place forever, and he feels heartbroken. He feels sad but exercises self-control. He has the courage to hear every lesson to the last. His performance during the last lesson is exemplary. He is kind even to a latecomer like Franz, a little boy, in this lesson. He uses a solemn and gentle tone while addressing the students. He has a logical mind and can analyze problems and deduce the reasons responsible for it. The problem for Alsace is that it puts off learning till tomorrow. He knows the emotional hold of a language over its users. He is a good communicator and explains everything patiently. Partings, farewells are painful to human being, and so M. Hamel is no exception. He fails to say goodbye as his throat is choked. On the whole, he is a patriotic gentleman. He is a perfect teacher. The next character that we have is Franz, a student in one of the schools, in one of the schools of Alsace. Having a very poor family setup, the boy was often asked to work in some mill for earning some money, but the family could not pay due attention towards his education. So the boy loved outside environment and wanted to enjoy it. In the school too, he often loved to work in the garden. He became fond of shrinking from work and used it to put off his learning as well as home task. But he was much scared of his teacher M. Hamel. He is a very strict disciplinarian, as we have already discussed. Now here, in addition to this, the boy has an acute sense of understanding, feeling, recognition, and respect. Entering the school, he sensed unusualness and calmness there. He was much surprised at this and was rather troubled to know that his teacher was leaving them because of an order from Berlin had come, and it has banned the teaching of French. During the writing period, he noticed sad expressions over the face of M. Hamel. When the teacher taught a lesson in grammar, it felt an indelible impression on the boy. He felt that the teacher was going to pour everything in their minds. Then the teacher wrote on the blackboard, "Long live France." The boy was deeply moved and he recognized his teacher for his word. Thus, France had all the senses of head and heart. Moving on to the text, the last lesson is set in the days of Franco-Prussian War. France was defeated by Prussia, and the district of Alsace and Lorraine had passed into the Prussians' hand. The orders came from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The story tells the effect of this transition on the people through the eyes of a young boy, Franz. The story describes what is just another ordinary day for Franz, who started very late for school that morning. In fact, he was reluctant to go to school as he had not prepared his French lesson on participles, and his teacher M. Hamel was going to conduct an oral test on the topic in the class. Initially, he thought of spending the bright warm day outside the door, outdoors, enjoying the chirping of birds and drilling of Prussian soldiers. This attracts him more, the nature and the drill of the soldiers at the back of the sawmill. But finally, he decided to go to school. So he starts his class not on the way to his class very late, and he dreads, he's scared of his teacher because his teacher is very strict, and at the same time the teacher is going to ask him the rules of participles which he doesn't know at all. And while passing on the way, he saw that there was a large crowd outside the town hall, and they were reading the bulletin boards, which had been a source of all bad news according to him. Like in this outside the town hall, in the bulletin board there are news of lost battles, the drafts, the orders of the commanding officer. So he thought of stopping and going there, but he was very late. So he just thought in his mind, what could be the reason now? What is the notice there? But he doesn't have that much time, so he just rushed towards his school. So there was a blacksmith who told him, it's okay, don't rush to go to school. You have plenty of time, and there will be plenty of time for you to reach the school. So he thought that even the blacksmith is making fun of him, and he wanted to go there as early as possible. Okay, go to school as early as possible. But he's already late, as we all know. Okay, so when he was about to reach the school, it was quite unusual. On that particular day, it was so unusual because on other days, the noise of the students were so loud that it could be heard from the street. The noises of opening and closing of desks, the lessons repeating after one after the other, and it was so loud that the students have to close their ears with their hands to understand what he or she is reading. Okay, so it was that much noisy. On top, the teacher is no less. He continues to rap his iron ruler on the table. And so on that day, he was like, if the situation is similar to that, he wanted to go to his seat without being noticed, because in this chaos, who will notice who is entering in and who is not? But so sad for him, it was like a Sunday morning, no noise, and it was so silent. Okay, it was so silent. And when he saw his friends from the window of the class, he saw that his friends were already seated there, and the teacher M. Hamel was walking out, up and down inside the classroom with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. So he had to open the door and go inside, distracting everyone, not distracting, but getting everybody's attention. Now you can imagine how sometimes when you are entering inside the classroom and everyone's attention is on you, how do you feel? So Franz blushed, okay, and at the same time he was frightened what is happening. But the teacher was quite calm and very kind, and the teacher did not scold him for being late. Instead, he said, "Go to your place quickly. We started the class without you," and that was very soothing to his ear, but at the same time, surprise. What is happening? Isn't it? What is happening? And so he jumped to his place, okay, and then when he sat there, he was frightened. He was frightened to see the sight of his classroom. As soon as he entered the classroom, he saw that the backbenchers were occupied by the village elders, who were grim and solemn. Okay, the backbenchers were usually empty, but on that day he could see that it was occupied by village elders, and they have come there. The people who were in the last bench were all Hauser, okay, a former postmaster, and several others besides. And everybody looked sad. That sadness, that gloom, that solemn environment was inside the classroom, which he could not decipher till then. And he was surprised to see the villagers there, and they were holding, textbooks of elementary school. And the person, this old Hauser, he kept it open on his knees with his great spectacles laying across the pages. Then another surprise, he found that his teacher, M. Hamel, was wearing his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap, all embroidered, and he know that the teacher wear this only on occasions like prize distribution or inspection day. So those were the days that he wears. So he is now trying to decode one after the other, but it's not helping him. The mystery is, more and more, and he wants to know what is the occasion today. Did I miss out anything? Something is wrong today. So that was happening. Looking around at his classmates, Franz noticed yet another things that is distinctly out of place. Okay, that is the people around him, the teacher. They all look sad. The people, around him. They all look sad, and not the kind of sad that comes with knowing your lesson for the day is assuredly going to be a dud. That, okay, I don't know this lesson. It's very sad. Not that kind of sadness, but the sadness was different. And the clouds lifted, and the truth is finally illuminated. When Mr. Hamel delivers the news, he will henceforth no longer be their teacher, as from this point forward, the schools in Alsace will be taught only in German. There will be no more French lesson. So Franz was shocked to get the news that it was their last lesson in French, and the new German teacher would take charge on the following day. He was full of regret for not learning his mother tongue, and he felt a sudden love for French. He even started liking M. Hamel and forgot all about his ruler and crankiness. The news is, every bit as shattering to Franz as everyone else. It also clears up a mystery encountered by Franz earlier on the way to school. You might have now connected the bulletin board outside, and the news that M. Hamel has delivered just now. So there was quite a commotion going on in front of the bulletin board posted at the front of City Hall, and Franz realized now that this news is by now surely all over the town. He is also, thunderstruck by the sudden drawing of what precisely the new order from the Prussians means to him personally. Starting immediately, Franz realizes he will no longer be able to learn his own language. He berates himself for not applying himself more to studies. This is still a matter of the participles and what Franz doesn't know about them, which is everything to deal with. Now these thoughts, and when he was trying to connect everything, the elderly people attending the class on the last day, which was a sign of respect, it was a sign of respect to the teacher for serving so sincerely for the past 40 years. So that was the reason that they have come for. And now he finds that his books, he regrets that instead of studying, he loves nature and seeking for, birds' eggs. So all this he regrets. But what to do, isn't it? It's not going to help him anymore. So while all these thinkings were going on within his inside his mind, his name was called out, and it was his turn to recite, the participle. What does he know about participle? In his mind, he was like, I will answer it without any mistake. But the moment he opened his mouth, everything got mixed up, and his heart was beating, and he did not dare to look up at the teacher. He could not answer. And so he was so scared, but M. Hamel did not scold him and remarked that the only trouble with the people of Alsace was putting off learning till the next day. We all do that, isn't it? We have tomorrow. Still, some of you going through the notes or going through the textbook, we all, every time we procrastinate, tomorrow, and so tomorrow becomes very late sometimes. So this is what the teacher says, that the people here usually talks about tomorrow, that we will learn tomorrow. So it's a very great loss for the people. And he also says, he tells them, how are you going to tell your people, France, that you are a Frenchman, but you do not know how to speak French language. So this is worst scenario that one could expect from a person. And so he does not scold him, but he blames the parents. He blames the parents for sending their children to earn money rather than going to school. The parents also were no less. They felt like going to school is a nuisance, where going to meal or for earning is more profitable for the family. He also blamed himself. Okay, not only others, but he also blamed himself for sending the students to water his plants. When the students come to school, he sometimes send them to water his plants, and sometimes giving them holiday when he wanted to go for fishing. So this is, everyone is equally responsible for putting off things of learning, and today they are in such a situation that they feel sorry, but they don't have time. Okay, and it is very regretful. Next, M. Hamel then talked of the French language, calling it the most beautiful language in the world. He says that French is one of the clearest and the most logical language in the world, and he says that we must guard it among ourselves and never forget it, because when people are enslaved, okay, when people lose their freedom, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to the prison. Okay, it is like that. So it is like a key. As long as we know our mother tongue, as long as we know our language, our own language, it is very helpful for us. Okay, so after that he opened a grammar and read to the class, and on that day he taught them so patiently, and the students also was amazed to see that they understood all of them. Okay, and he never explained everything with so much passion, but on that day it was as if the poor old man wanted to give everything, wanted to pour out everything into the brain of the students before going at one stroke. It was not possible. So after the grammar lesson, it was a lesson on writing, and M. Hamel had a new copies for them, for the students, and written in a beautiful round hand, France, Alsace, France, Alsace. So everyone was very busy writing, and when Franz looked at everyone busy doing it, it was as if flags, or the flags were floating, and there was no noise. Everyone was so quiet. The only noise was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Okay, and so when he looked outside, he saw a pigeon, and he wondered whether these people would make, it will make even the pigeon or even the bird speak in German. So that is what he thought. And so he looked up from his writing, and he saw that his teacher was motionless in his chair and was looking at one thing after another. It was like he was trying to capture all the memories in his heart, in his mind before going, and it was very emotional moment for both the teacher as well as for the students. So for 40 years he had been in the same school, and same garden, same house. The only changes was the desks and the benches, which were worn smooth. Okay, and the trees, the walnut trees, have become taller. So these were the only changes, but the teacher wanted to capture all of these, and it was so silent that they could hear the teacher's sister, okay, moving about in the room, packing their trunks, and the sound of the trunks also breaks their heart. It is a noise telling, or a sound telling, that it's time for them to go. Okay, but this teacher was courageous enough. He was courageous to listen or to give out lesson till the end. And after the writing, they had a lesson in history, and down there, the old Hauser put his spectacles and, holding his primer in both the hands, read the spellings along with the children, and that too crying, the old man reading together with the children and crying, and his voice was trembling with emotions. Had it been other time, the children along with Franz, they would be laughing at this situation, but now they don't know they want to laugh or cry. Okay, so that was the last lesson that Franz remembers. And at once the clock, the church clock struck 12. Then the Angelus. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians returning from the drill sounded so clear, and M. Hamel stood up very pale in his chair, and he looked so tall on that day, and he wanted to say something. He said, "My friends, but he cannot say anything. His voice were choked, okay? His voice were choked, and he could not go on. So he turned back, okay, took a piece of chalk and wrote on the board, Vive la France, okay, Vive la long live France. And then he stopped and leaned against the wall, and without a word he made a gesture to the students that school is dismissed, you may go. So in this way he was filled with emotions, okay. It was so emotional for him that he could not say or tell the students that the class is dismissed. It was only through his gesture that the school is over, okay, and that he can go. So here we can see that the story written in a historical background is a beautiful depiction of emotional bond of people with their mother tongue. It depicts the pathos of the situation, that in order to conquer the minds of the people, it is not enough to win a country physically by force. In order to enslave a people completely, a conqueror needs to enslave their thoughts and make them devoid of the knowledge and use of their own mother tongue. Okay, once this is devoid, using your knowledge and using your own mother tongue, when we lose it, we are a slave to our conqueror. So this is the lesson that this last lesson is teaching to us, and it is very much relevant to our present society and to our present situation also, because most of us are devoid of our own mother tongue, as we all know it. So let us understand and learn, and let us not fall into the category of France. Now, let us now discuss few themes of this lesson. The first one is linguistic chauvinism. Linguistic chauvinism is a term applied to the concept of preference of one language over another. Fundamentally, it has a negative connotation associated with superiority, but on a broader level, the chauvinism towards one language over another is equally applicable to multilingual circumstances in which spoken by the majority would be deemed the official language, such as in America. In the case of this story, thematic exploration of linguistic chauvinism references both the passion expressed by the characters towards the loss of the French language being taught in the school, as well as the oppressive introduction of German as the new official language of the region in the wake of its annexation as a negotiation for a peaceful end of the Franco-Prussian War. It suffices to say that the unwritten part of this story is the equitable scene of celebration going on somewhere in favor of German replacing French as the language taught in the school within the annexed territory. Suddenly imagine that one day somebody come and tell you that from tomorrow it's not English, but in this school we are going to learn in Russian language. So suddenly it's not going to help us, and so we might not like it also, that these sudden changes. The next is language as national identity. The story explores a theme often found in literature that questions what constitutes a national identity. What is about a nationality that creates a collective feeling of belonging among a constituency that differs to substantially, among other characteristics associated with cultural distinction? What unifies a Swedish people as Swedes? Or what makes a Swedish people as a Swedes? Is it their blonde hair, light complexion, or hardy resistance to frigid climate, cold climate? Or is it the Swedish language? Is it their looks? Is it their behavior? Or is it the language that makes them Swedes? So you know the answer, isn't it? It is the language, a communality of language, common language, that binds them all in their cultural heritage through facilitations of communication. This conception of language as key to national identity is even more pronounced in countries like France, where physical distinctions are much more diverse than in Sweden or Kenya or Japan, for instance. If language is the primal element in constituting a cultural identity based on nationalist sentiment, then what would be the effect of an oppressive foreign intruder attempting to erase that language and impose it upon the populace? What will be the situation? So you have to imagine that situation. And the last theme is, don't put off until tomorrow. It is for you also, my dear students. When the young student narrator, Franz is a narrator in this story, isn't it, wakes up, the worst thing in the world to him has to face his teacher's lesson on participle that he neglected to study for. All he can think all morning until he arrives at school is his anxiety over failing to study and the trouble he is going to get in it because of this, that he doesn't know anything about participles. By the end of that very same day, the lesson no longer matters because the French language is no longer going to be a subject to be taught in the school. Overnight, the requirement to learn French has disappeared. But ironically, France's desire to learn it has exploded. One of the themes of the story is moral instruction. Don't put off things, learning, or doing things until tomorrow, because the opportunity may be taken from you by then. Opportunity does not come all the time. It comes all once in a lifetime, isn't it? So we have to grab that opportunity. Don't put on or put off until tomorrow. Procrastination is a very bad habit. So these are the themes of this lesson, and this lesson is teaching us, this is not only the last lesson of this prose section, but also, it should be an eye-opener for many of us to understand the importance of our language, especially our mother tongue, and how it acts as an identity for ourselves. And so let us learn from this lesson. This is all for this video. Thank you.